Hey, what's up, Liron here. Today I want to discuss with you extreme simplification. What I mean is we're going to take a reference photo and we'll take just one idea from it, okay? We won't stick to the colors. We won't barely stick to the drawing too. We will take the idea of a bridge going into the depth or into the distance and we'll try to convey that. So we'll change everything, and I want to give you this freedom to try it out yourself and change a lot of what you see and extremely simplify it in a way. So let's get to it. So I want to show you how you can really take one idea and only focus on that and really change everything up, ignore all the rest of the details. And this is a lovely scene, and I want to show you in particular because it has quite a lot of details. So what I'm going to do is first draw. Now look at how simple the drawing stage is. So what I'm going to do is somewhere on the lower half, I'm going to put in a horizon line. And that's actually going to be where the water meets the city. Now for the city, focus only on the outlines. I don't care about anything that's actually inside it. Okay, so here we have this mosque structure with a couple of towers. I'm going to vary their height and distances just to keep things a little more interesting. And here it's not as important. And then we have this layer, if you want to call it, of the dock. Now to make it a little more interesting, I'll add these stumps that you often see in docks. Just to keep it a little, I don't know, to have something there. Now the bridge, that's the main idea of this video. I know you can barely see, by the way, don't worry. You don't have much to see, trust me. The bridge here is going to be the main interest, focal point, whatever you want to call it. Because what I'm going to do is convey depth. Okay, that's what I'm going to try and do. So here's the bridge coming out of a corner, like a lot of people say that you should avoid, like I also say sometimes, but that's fine. I'm okay with it. So that's the bridge. You see barely any details. This is the thing it rests on or is supported by, kind of like that. And remember, the details here aren't going to matter as much. What's going to matter here is the values and creating a sense of depth and fogginess, okay? So this is the bridge. We have the shadow under the bridge, which is kind of combined with reflection. So you want to take both of these into consideration, both the shadows and the reflection. So maybe this kind of a pattern. A couple of details on top of the bridge, very important. This is, what do you call it, like a strings or wires or ropes kind of a thing here. Goes on like that. We have another one of these towers with one of these, and this is all we need. I'm going to show you up close. Try making this fast. So now we can go on to the painting stage, and I will explain as I'm painting what I'm doing. So this being a highly simplified painting, I want to focus on a couple of things. Lots of flow, okay? Lots of good flow top to bottom. This is why I have my paper at a bit of a larger angle than I'm used to, that I usually do. So this is around 30, even 35 degree angle. By the way, sorry about the noise from outside. I did want to record this real time rather than narrated. So you're gonna hear some interruptions. Now, I'm gonna use all my primary colors to mix this kind of a gray, so French ultramarine, Parylene red, and yellow ochre. Okay, these are my primaries. I've been using them for a while now. A couple of weeks that I've been enjoying just using those. And I'm going to lay down a flat wash. Keep it relatively light, okay? It's a bit cloudy on that left corner, but then the more I move down, the more I'm going to feed it more with water rather than anything else, really. The water here should kind of mimic the sky, so you can actually go just maybe a little bit stronger here on the left. And this is pretty much it for our first wash. I know there's barely anything there. Now what we can do, and let me show you just how wet the paper is while I also clean off this bottom edge of excess water. So it's really, really wet right now. You can really see everything from top to bottom. The top is just starting to maybe dry a little, but the bottom is really, really wet, okay? So what we want to do now is maybe allow it for a few seconds, and I'm still contemplating whether I want to put something here, perhaps wet and keep it as blurry as it's going to be by dispersing wet and wet. And then I'm going to add the bridge. My strategy is start dark and go very light the further I go back and kind of blend it in. okay? So this is what I'm going to do. In fact, we can do an experiment and hopefully it will work out. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mix some paint here. And what I want to show you is how I'm going to use wet and wet just to make things, again, flow a bit. But the thing is, you have to be really aware of the wetness on paper and maybe eliminate the angle. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this stage flat. Now, it may be a little too wet, but I'm gonna take the risk. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna add just a bit more water, and let's do a test. So you see how much it spreads out? That's I think good. It will work. So I'm gonna try and lay down this wash one go, very flat, okay? Like this. So this is going to be the entirety of the background. On purpose, I'm changing the angle. I don't want things to move down, okay? I want this to be a relatively clean line and clear transition from the city to the water. So it's kind of a risk I'm taking right now. The benefit is I'm going to get a very smooth edge, which I'm interested in. Now the bridge. I'm going to do the part that's farther from us, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, I'm not going to touch this because this is going to be sharp. I don't want this to be wet and wet. And then I'm gonna put everything here. Sorry about all of the noise. Then I'm gonna put the rest of the right side of the city or horizon, whatever that is. Vary it a bit. Now, my timing is okay. Maybe I should have waited a little longer, but I think it will work out and I can always sharpen this line just by going over it. I think I should have waited for this timing on this end, but it's fine. It's no worries. Now as it dries, and let me show you, you see how it starts to dry? I can bring in, or bring out rather, some of the towers a little more, just to see. What I'm thinking of is just getting a few clearer, sharper kind of edges there, but I should wait a little longer for that. However, I do already like how it looks. Let me show you up close once again. I do like this kind of a blended thing that you can still see there was or is a tower there, but it's quite blended. And I'm gonna do the same on the left side here. Here it's really starting to dry, so you want to be a little careful. And I think this is a good spot to kind of stop. Let's see here. You see, you always have to check how wet it is. I can see it even without tilting the paper, but for you, because it's through the camera, you can see as many details. You should really tilt the... I should really tilt the paper to show you, okay? So everything that goes on in the distance is kind of a fog. Now, here's what I think we'll do. We'll let it dry, and then I'll continue with the next wash, and you'll see I'm gonna start light here. Let's leave this flat. I'm gonna start dark here and then go lighter and lighter as we go further, and we'll darken the foreground a bit to show that it's closer to us. So let's let it dry and then come back. Okay, so this is fully dry now, pretty much 99% I think. And let me explain an important technique or approach I use that I talk about very occasionally, so you may not know. I'm not gonna use for this bridge wet and wet. What I'm gonna do, and by the way, I have a black and white version of the reference photo. I'll probably share it on the screen as well. I'm gonna do just use the values I want next to one another. So what this will do is it won't have too much movement, and that's good for me. So here's what I'm gonna do, kind of approximately. I'm gonna put a slightly medium to dark value here. I'm gonna go a little darker where it's closer, and then slowly move into a lighter value and blend it somewhere around here. I'm not really sure where, but here we're gonna go really, really light, okay? This is gonna be a little darker, slightly lighter, and lighter. Maybe we won't even touch these, okay? Now the reason I'm not doing wet and wet is I don't want too many blended movements here. I want to just put the value I see. Now it's not really the value I see, it's more like the value I see in my mind's eye, because remember, I changed the reference completely. And here's how you can simplify it, really. Just look at the shapes as one big kind of a thing that you don't have to elaborate on what's going on inside them. Okay? Oh, that makes sense. So here is our starting value. Maybe I'll go a little darker. And when you're doing this not monochromatically, you actually have to mix the color you need. So that's the challenge of doing it this way. So I'm looking for a gray that is also slightly darker than what I had before. And it doesn't have to be fully gray, it can have a little bit of red in it. So I think what we have now is good. Let me place that in. Look at this. One go. Okay, don't play around with it too much. Don't wait too long. And then for the small details here, I really have to use a smaller brush. So hopefully that'll work. Kind of taking my time, really. I should have worked much faster, but we'll do our best. And these are also quite important. And then from there, hopefully we can preserve some kind of a flow. So the edge here is fairly light. It's not too dark. So I'm gonna go like this, okay? Keeping it fairly light. Now here's where I'm gonna go a little darker, okay? So I'm gonna mix real fast. You see, you have to be faster if it's not monochromatic. The bottom is a little darker, so I really want to show that. Now it has this nice little kind of pattern of crisscross, but it's still kind of in the shadow, so I'm gonna go in between those crisscrosses, and I can go over them again later on. I actually like some of the highlights that are left here. I can actually go over these again like this if I want them to still show, but the point is I'm still keeping it all kind of together, okay? It's hard for me to explain verbally, but hopefully seeing it helps. So this is the bridge, a bit of kind of a wet and wet feel, but not too much, because I still kept things next to one another rather than putting a layer then going over it with wet and wet. Now I'm gonna blue it up and lighten it up, okay? Gradually as we move farther. Because remember, we have a very limited area where we can turn this lighter, and we have to have it much lighter here where the bridge is further from us. Okay, so something like this. Here, I'm gonna spray some water just to keep this area wet, because I will need it wet for a little longer. And we'll switch to a smaller brush, something like this, just for, and I wanna keep this a little wetter and more watery. We will barely see this detail, okay? Barely see these. Kind of like this. And then we'll blend this off into what we already had there. Something like that, okay? And the edge may still not be blended enough. So you can use a bit of a tissue. You want to dab out some of the moist and then kind of blend it maybe into the background. It will disappear, okay? Now these, a bit more water, a bit more movement, but I don't want it to go over this part, because here I'm gonna use a bit of a darker value. So let's use a very dark thing here so that we get something still showing, but we do need a little bit of warmth. So here we go, because remember, these legs of the bridge are still quite close to us. They need to still have some presence, okay? So something like this maybe. And I have to straighten this line. This isn't good. There we go. Darken this edge maybe with a bit of a thicker paint. My bad. So we don't get too many backgrounds. Okay, here we go. I could even go over this edge, but let's see. You see, it's still a little moist, so we can. So in fact, let's do that. But we keep things fairly strong mixed right now, because we want to make sure it will still show on the almost dry paper. Something like this. I actually liked it when they were a little cooler, but I don't want to overdo it. So here we go. Base of this thing is a little darker. Let's do a bit of, it's not really wet and wet, kind of wet next to light, or, you know, I don't know. You don't have to name everything. And then here's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna use a very thin wash here just to bring out maybe this alleged shadow on this leg, okay? With the bridge, I know you can't see much of that area, but it's fine. Get this thing here, and then we have the shadow, reflection, whatever it is, okay? Now keep this gap here going. You want a bit of a gap there. Add a bit of yellow and a bit of red to warm things up just a bit. Let's see what this looks like. Let's give it a try. Should be a little stronger here. like that. Now I did make a small mistake here. Maybe I'll fix it later. I don't know if it's that important, to be honest. Let's justify this shadow shape. Doesn't make much sense now. Like this. And as it moves down, it's actually gonna lighten up and blur out a bit, just because it gets further from the object the reflection is cast by. So I think this works, something like this. And you can also just spray a bit of water here if you want to kind of help it move around a bit. Now while we're at it, we can start connecting it to the wash that's closest to us. So let's do that. Keep this one fairly warm because again it is a shape that's closer to us. And I think it could be nice to maybe tie this together with a few, I'm just showing you and then I'll continue with this section. Maybe a few of these, like to show there's like a, I don't know if it's a fence, but you know, something like this. I don't want to leave too much paper white here, to be honest with you, so we'll try getting a thick enough combo, or a wet enough combo rather. Now, these should be darker than the background, so I will make them a little stronger, these bumps or whatever, so you can still do that kind of wet and wet. Oops, dropped my brush out of excitement, and then kind of connect these, and I'm fine with that being kind of blended. I actually want that kind of a, I don't know, foggy or blended look here. Let's help this move a bit. You see this harsh transition here? I'm gonna have to fix that somehow. So maybe I'll just put a bit of water, take a bit of a small brush, and help it out. So I'll do something like this. I'm really going off with just feeling right now. I don't really know what I'm doing, but hopefully that kind of smoothens the transition. Yeah, and what I could do is, if I already sprayed on it, I could actually go ahead and get just a bit of a definition of a shadow underneath, like this. Kind of help the idea of the bridge, maybe a bit of shadow there. But you really want to be careful with these to not overdo it. Something like that, just to kind of soften that transition there. And you see the bridge is really flowing into the distance, a very nice kind of a scene. I don't know if we're done, we'll see. I want to keep this one fairly simple. But I do think I'll need to strengthen the legs a bit here, just to keep them separate from the background really, because it's still kind of, this part is still closer. So let's see here. Even this other pair of legs, kind of like that. Yeah, just to make it pop against this light background. Then I can kind of let it dry for now and see if I want to strengthen that definition on this thing, because this has to be darker than this. So let's let it dry for a few minutes and see how we're gonna handle the rest. Okay, so we're really almost done here. The one thing, I'm looking at the reference photo and I'm thinking to myself, I do want to strengthen the separation between the bridge and the reflection, and thankfully it's actually very well separated in the reference photo. So basically what I'm gonna do is another glaze, okay, keeping it kind of, you have to strike a good balance of warm and cool because it's water, so it's going to be kind of cooler. On the other hand, it's closer. So I think we're in the ballpark. And I just want to make a better separation between again, the base of the bridge and the shadow itself. So let's put like this kind of a darker shadow for good measure. Same, strengthening this one. And then from that, let's go slightly darker on the reflection. I think it will make an interesting kind of separation between the two. Maybe go really thin on the details here like that. I don't know, sometimes ripples and stuff like that comes really easily for me, and sometimes I have to struggle for them a bit. And today feels like an okay day. And now I'm gonna go over it like that, just to keep things moving a bit in the lower sections especially. we still want this to be quite blended. And then we have this similar phenomenon kind of in this area, but here I really want to be very careful not to overdo it. So as long as I created a separation between the bridge and the shadow underneath, I'm good. Do I want to add anything else? I don't think so. I actually really like this mysterious look of it going into the shadows. One last thing maybe, more on the blue side. Just maybe we'll do another thin wash over this thing, because I do want to separate it from the city, and I like that kind of an effect. So I'm gonna go over it like this. Sorry for the changing light and shadow conditions here, and for Ruth's barking. There's a kind of cleaning vehicle, street cleaning vehicle outside. Probably all the rest of the dogs bark and she joins them. So here we go, very thin details, very thin and light details, and I think this just kind of puts it one step closer in a good way. Really contemplating whether or not I want to strengthen some other things here. Let's try it out. So maybe this. It's very important to keep this side blended. And you know what? I think we're good. I think I want to stop right here. I'm gonna maybe let it dry a little more, sign it, and we'll remove the tape together. Okay, so it's pretty much dry. Let's remove the tape. Hopefully it will give it a nice little effect. Usually it happens more with landscapes. And seascapes and cityscapes and all of that. I don't know, this is kind of all in one. But in any case, yeah, a simple one. Not necessarily my best, not my worst, but it does do the job hopefully, and passes on that impression of depth and this bridge kind of dropping into the distance. I like that mystery here of all the poles and everything. A lot to improve, as always, but hopefully you enjoyed this process. Now we can wrap it up. So thank you so much once again for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, not my best work, not my worst, but hopefully the idea comes across. So in any case, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you still aren't. I have tons of other videos like this one. We'll see you again in the next one.